Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to have a sixth sense for social situations, sensing exactly what to say or feel in the blink of an eye, or why some people might struggle to pick up on those same cues, opting instead to think through their responses, like they are solving a math problem? It turns out that intuition might not be just a feeling, it might be a physical biological speed limit built right into our brain cells. Deep within our brains, in areas like the anterior cingulate cortex and the frontal insula, we have a very special set of cells called von Economo neurons. These are not your average brain cells, they are absolutely massive. And for a long time, researchers have been scratching their heads wondering what they actually do. They are like the VIPs of the brain because they are only found in humans, great apes, and a few other animals known for being highly social. We have suspected for a while that these neurons are involved in social intuition. But until now, we did not have a clear mathematical picture of what they are computing. That is where a new idea called the fast lane hypothesis comes in. The scientists behind this study realized that these neurons show up in places that match up perfectly with two very different conditions involving social life. In frontotemporal dementia, or FTD for short, these neurons seem to essentially disappear, and patients often lose their ability to read social situations entirely. In autism, however, the development of these cells seems to be a bit different from the start. Researchers have noticed that autistic individuals often do not lose the ability to understand social rules, but they often take a more conscious, rule-based approach to get there, instead of relying on that instant, intuitive gut feeling. This makes it look like there's a problem with the speed of that social processing, rather than the final accuracy. To test if these neurons really are the brain's equivalent of a fast lane, the team built a computer model of a network of neurons. They created a virtual circuit that had to make rapid-fire decisions about social threats versus friendly interactions. They tuned some of these virtual neurons to act like these special, super fast ones, and others to act like normal ones. They then tested what happened when they acted like they had typical brain function, and what happened when they mimicked the conditions of autism or dementia. The results were quite amazing. When the virtual brain had a healthy amount of these fast lane cells, it made lightning-fast decisions. But when those cells were taken away, the network did not get dumber or inaccurate. It just got slower. It suddenly could not make those rapid-fire judgments anymore, which creates a huge bottleneck in decision-making. Think about it like taking an exam. You can either answer questions quickly based on your gut feeling, or you can take your time to calculate every possibility. The gut feeling is usually faster, but sometimes you might make a small mistake. If you take your time, you are much more likely to be accurate, but you might run out of time before you finish. This study shows that our social brain operates under this exact same compromise. The von Economo neurons sacrifice a little bit of deep detail to buy you speed. It is a biological speed-accuracy trade-off. When you lose that fast lane, your brain is forced to switch to that slower, more deliberate, and more accurate way of thinking. This is why the computer network was just as accurate in the end, but felt much more sluggish. One of the most fascinating parts of this study is how it handles the difference between something like autism and dementia. In their simulation, when they modeled the autism-like brain, they found it was sometimes able to find a workaround, because the system was built that way from the beginning. The other slower neurons learned how to pick up the slack. This matches what we know about human behavior, where folks might use logic to navigate social gaps. But when they modeled dementia, which is like suddenly stripping away those fast lanes after they had already been installed, the system really struggled because it had not had the time to build those compensatory pathways during its development. This study is really compelling because it gives us a clear, testable mechanism for why we behave the way we do when we are in a social setting. It is not just about being smart or sociable. It is about how your brain balances the need for speed against the need for accuracy. Of course, science is never fully finished. This study used a computer model, and while that is great for testing hypotheses, it does not perfectly replicate the messy, complex reality of a living human brain. Future research will need to look at how these neurons handle even more complex social cues and how they might work in larger, more varied networks. Personally, I think this is a huge step forward for psychology and neuroscience. By shifting the focus from just looking at parts of the brain to asking what those brains are actually computing, we get a much deeper understanding of our social lives. It turns out that having that sharp social intuition really is a fast lane for the brain, an understanding that helps us appreciate the different ways that different brains function. If you enjoyed this dive into the architecture of the mind, please hit that like button, comment your thoughts below. And make sure to subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab so you never miss an update on the science shaping our world. Thanks for hanging out in the lab and keep being curious.